We have breaking news right now in Donald Trump's criminal hush money case. Just moments ago, Trump's team filing a new motion calling to dismiss it, citing presidential immunity and his victory in the 2024 election. Now, that comes one day after Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg told the court sentencing should be postponed while the appeals process plays out, potentially even postponed until after Trump's second term in office. Judge Juan Merchan would need to approve this proposal. It's all uncharted territory, as this country has never before had a president-elect facing a criminal sentencing. Joining us now, MSNBC contributor and former U.S. Attorney Chuck Rosenberg and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Lisa, what more are we learning or reading in this letter?
So we learned yesterday, Anna, that former President Trump's lawyers intended to file a motion to dismiss the entire indictment. That wouldn't just wipe the slate clean with respect to the existing conviction. It would mean that the case essentially wouldn't exist at all. The New York District Attorney's Office telling Judge Merchan yesterday they oppose that and want the conviction to stand. In the letter that they've sent to Judge Merchan this morning, they're putting a little bit more meat on the bones as to why they believe that the case should be dismissed, citing not only the Supreme Court's presidential immunity decision, but also noting that according to Department of Justice policy, a sitting president can't be prosecuted. And for the same reasons that animate that policy, those principles should be extended to a president in transition, that essentially the person needs to attend to those core constitutional functions of preparing himself for the office, and therefore they believe the whole thing should be dismissed. But the most interesting thing to me is the date on which they are proposing to file a motion, and that's December 20th, because according to the DA's office, they would like to even oppose a brief much earlier on December 9th. If former President and future President Trump's lawyers don't file their brief until December 20th, that's setting up a motion to dismiss that's not fully briefed until after the inauguration, when he is not just a president-elect in transition, but he then becomes a sitting president and the issues to be litigated become different. This looks to me like an effort on the Trump lawyers' behalf to kick this can down the road until he is president again, and potentially even move this to a federal court to litigate the question of whether sentencing is appropriate once Trump is once again in the Oval Office, Anna.
Chuck, what is your read on where we are right now in this case?
Yeah, well, Lisa, Anna did a great job summarizing the legal positions. Look, Judge Merchan has two sort of possible paths here. He can treat the jury verdict as he would treat any other jury verdict and proceed to sentencing. But there's a problem. As Lisa articulated, you have a president-elect, soon to be a president again, a sitting president, and there's an incompatibility. The Constitution, I think properly for any president, whether you loathe or love Mr. Trump, for any president, treats him differently, meaning that he ought not be prosecuted or held to account in a criminal court while he is president. Whether or not that extends to a president-elect, that's not been determined. But Judge Merchan has to decide, do we treat Mr. Trump as off limits for some period of time, 4+ years until he's no longer president again? Or do we honor the jury verdict now as it stands in the normal course and proceed to sentencing? I think the district attorney has the right approach here. Again, there are all imperfect choices, Anna, but the least imperfect choice is to defend the jury verdict and to postpone the sentencing until Mr. Trump is no longer president. Then you can do both things. You can respect the constitutional prerogatives of a president and give him the ability to meet the requirements of his job to the extent Mr. Trump can, and you can honor the jury verdict. It'll just be years from now.
So this is a big if, with Trump's team still pushing for dismissal, but Trump's attorneys argue leaving sentencing just hanging over Trump's second term could lead to, quote, extended proceedings that could make Trump, quote, unduly cautious in the discharge of his official duties as president. Chuck, your thoughts on that argument?
Well, it's an argument, but I wouldn't give it much credence, Anna. I mean, defense attorneys make arguments. They do it all the time. Some are thoughtful, some are silly. This one seems to me silly. There'll be nothing hanging over Mr. Trump's head while he is president if the sentence is delayed. The attorneys can file other motions and make other arguments and litigate as they see fit. Mr. Trump will be able to fulfill the duties of his office during his last term, and then he will face the consequences as any other criminal defendant. So, the fact that someone files something doesn't make it meritorious, Anna. I don't see any merit in the notion that something hanging over Mr. Trump's head, a delayed sentencing in this case, would interfere with his duties as president of the United States.
Let's not forget, Trump has tapped two of his defense attorneys in the hush money case, Todd Blanche and Emil Bovey, for senior roles in the Justice Department in his incoming administration. Lisa, if this case does drag out, what impact could that have?
Well, I think it causes a conflict of interest for Todd Blanche and Emil Bovey, because if, for example, Anna, they continue to brief the issue about whether this case should exist into a future Trump presidency. If Todd Blanche and Emil Bovey are then in the Department of Justice, the department itself will have an interest in getting involved in the case on behalf of the executive office of the president. There are interests for the office of the president that are different than the interests that Trump as an individual has. And Emil Bovey and Todd Blanche, having represented the president in his personal capacity, will have that conflict and may have to even recuse themselves from the department's involvement in this case in the future.
Lisa Rubin and Chuck Rosenberg, thank you both very much.